Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships and healing from narcissistic relationships. So, here's a question that was sent in. The narcissistic person in my life actually thinks he is empathic. What the hell? Well, what the hell indeed. So let's break that one down. I know that this question asker is not the only person. In fact, we've gotten this question many times, which is, what? So if you ever had this happen, I mean, if you have, drop it in the comments. You're dealing with a deeply narcissistic person who has almost no empathy whatsoever, and they think of themselves as being deeply empathic, nice people. And they say it with a straight face, like, I'm the most empathic person in the room. And you're like, oh, hello. Like, and you really think now you're in the twilight zone. I recall actually working with someone years ago who was so narcissistic, really vindictive, super mean, absolutely unaware of the needs or feelings of anyone around him, friends, family, partner, colleagues, and would frequently say to me out loud, tell me, hey, Doc, aren't I the most generous person you've ever known? And then he would go on to share with me stories about how he tipped a server hundreds of dollars, or he overpaid someone who was working for him. I'm sure maybe that server at that moment might have thought he was empathic, but nobody else. And he was not. It can feel gaslighty when you are in what feels like a one-way relationship and having your feelings invalidated by the other person who views themselves as super empathic. You doubt yourself. You wonder if you're missing something. You wonder, maybe I'm the one who's not empathic because I guess they did give a big tip and I don't give such a big tip, so maybe I don't have empathy. So it's important to know that a core element of narcissism is diminished insight. People with a narcissistic personality style really don't have the capacity for self-reflection, the ability to accurately and meaningfully look inward and be aware of how their behavior affects others, or even their motivations for their behaviors. Narcissism is basically a series of defenses a person is surrounded by that protect them in their fragile ego. And part of that self-protection is to believe things about themselves that are considered good things, but that are simply untrue, like how empathic they are. My interest, though, is how this affects you, how it affects survivors of these relationships. I mean, right out the gate, it's important to understand what empathy is. The ability and a desire to understand the feelings and the experiences of another person and make behavioral and emotional shifts in accordance with that. Basically, you see someone crying, you don't walk up to them and say, hey, get over it, or make fun of them. You may adjust your tone, your body language, and try to help them. That's empathy. Empathy has another piece to it, which is the ability to be aware of your impact on other people. An empathic person will take a minute and be aware enough to catch themselves so they don't do or say something that would be offensive or hurtful, and that basically takes into account another person's feelings. The second thing to understand is what I had already mentioned, was that narcissistic people have a distorted sense of who they are and how they go through the world. And the distortion is usually that they're better at something than they really are. So they may believe, or at least say, that they're empathic. Just because they say they are, it doesn't make it true. You got to look at their behavior. The key to surviving any kind of narcissistic or antagonistic relationship is to try to not feel upside down and confused while you're in them, which isn't easy. Basically, I'm saying you got to keep your wits about you. If someone is not attuned to your feelings, says insensitive things to you and to others, and seems unaware of their impact on others, they aren't that empathic, even if they say they are. The anger that these relationships bring up in us is often due to the idea that we can see that the narcissistic person knows what good behavior is. And they know that empathy is good, or they wouldn't walk around touting how empathic they are. They know empathy is a good thing. However, they can't be bothered to engage in it. They just say that they are, but they can't actually do the work of the empathy because that actually is work for them. Empathy isn't work for healthy people. It comes naturally. However, to not receive any from someone who is extolling themselves as empathic, in a way, is almost worse than having to endure their bad behavior. And also keep in mind that generous and empathic are not the same thing. Generosity is a sharing of resource, often disproportionate to what would be expected. But narcissistic generosity is often financial, and it's generally transactional and quid pro quo. I gave you this, so I expect that. None of that is empathic, so no, it's not you who's wrong. The virtue posturing of many narcissistic people means that they want to mobilize the virtue to their benefit without actually having to live in it. It's not supposed to work that way. But if you've ever had that confusing experience of the narcissistic person actually genuinely believing that they are an empathic person, I saw this happen a few weeks ago. And the person actually was like, I'm just such a good person. And it was one of those moments where I actually put my hand in front of my face. I'm like, you're still here. This is still Earth. You have not gone into the Matrix. And I didn't engage with the person. I just kind of walked out of the room and I was like, whew. So you can have those moments. You can do a little bit of that reality testing with yourself. Like, am I still here on planet Earth? But just because someone says they are something, like I said, doesn't make it true. Hope that clears that up. And thanks again.